probably going to be somewhat of a rebrand of the show and some new graphics, things like that coming up, as well as some partners that we might be taking on to grow the show and help us continue to put out the kind of content that we want to. So really excited for that, man. It's going to be a great change or a great shift for us as we get ready. We're really trying to push it out next week. That way it's ready to go. And week 1, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, we'll have everything in place. And we'll have everything kind of ironed out. We're going to be doing the Twitter spaces that we talked about post game on Notre Dame games, as well as some additional content and things like that that'll be pushing out, throughout the week. We'll continue to do two live shows a week at least, and then some other content, interviews, things like that will be pushed out on the off days and whatnot. So really excited to kind of expand this and continue to grow this platform, and just looking forward to it, man. I'm pumped up as hell for this football season, for going through all this and getting to interact with people. Pumped to go to the Louisville game September 28th. Lock that in. I'm good to go. That's happening. So I will be in South Bend September 28th for the Louisville game. I actually got approached by an LSU alumni that I know, and I might be going down to LSU for a game this year as well. So just excited to kind of travel around, meet some people, and interact with some people that might be interested in the show. So just wanted, some housekeeping stuff and things like that as we get ready. But other than that, man, let's jump into the show.
Right on.
Awesome. So as always, start with our social media deep dive. Some funny stuff came out recently. One thing I saw, I think you sent it to me, so I'm pretty sure you've seen it, but Mike Gundy is the gift that keeps on giving, man. Every time you turn around, he has another comment, another clip, another soundbite, whatever it is. Whether it's, Ollie Gordon getting a DUI and him saying his punishment is he might carry the ball 50 times in the first game, or this one that I'm going to throw up on the screen here, that just gives you an idea of kind of what his mindset on things, I guess. Let me get it here. And so he was asked about how it feels to be getting into the football season and everything like that. And he said, basically NIL's over. So tell your agent to quit calling us, asking for more money. It's non-negotiable now. We can revisit it in December. Now we're able to direct ourselves just to football, and that part has been fun. So basically what he's saying is, listen, you're getting all you're getting. Stop asking me for money, and let's focus on football, which as a football guy, as somebody that's been around a lot of football coaches in my life, that has 2 that are in my family, the reason that football coaches love coaching football is because of the football aspect and the personal relationships with the players. This NIL stuff, the business side of things, really coaches hate that shit. They don't want to be looking at it as a business. They want to be focused on coaching football players, developing young men, and coaching football, which is why you see Chip Kelly's and things like that leaving head coaching positions for coordinator positions, because they want to get back to the basics. So I thought that was just a really good, example of how a coach really thinks. Like, bro, head coaches dealing with this NIL stuff, they can't wait for it to be done. And so right now it's done. Like, you got paid what you're getting paid. You're not getting a dime more. And it leads to an interesting conversation, though, is when do you think, because there's been rumors that it's already happened or that it will happen, but when do you think you have players that start withholding services, right? That say, yeah, I know we agreed on 100K, but after 5 games, I'm leading the nation in rushing yards, and I think I'm worth more than that, so I'm just not going to play.
Well, what I can tell you is this, that happened at a major program.
Well, it was Ole Miss, right?
Believe so.
Yeah.
So I've asked a couple people about it. I haven't got 100% confirmation that it was 100% true. I can find out, but the stuff like this going forward is going to be a problem for the players. Yeah. Because take Justin Jefferson, he's getting paid what he's getting paid this year. Mm-hmm. He can't just sit out in the middle of the season. He just got a new deal.
Well, yeah, but And the difference there is he has a contract. So
Well,
there's nothing he is contractually obligated to, and he can get fined. He can do, they have ways to protect against that in the NFL. There's none of that in college football.
see, that's going to be the issue I feel going forward with college football, because there's no collective bargaining agreement, and they're just throwing things at the wall and seeing what's sticking.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is that if you start allowing these coaches to find these players with no collective bargaining agreement, let's say you only get $4,000 a month, and he says, you got a reckless driving speeding ticket, you're just not getting paid this month.
Yep.
So I throw this back into that category. Careful what you wish for, because not all these kids have been employees, and I don't think they understand the employee-employer relationship on how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
I think it, and now that next year schools will be paying players directly, so I think that will hopefully lead to some more control over this kind of wild west environment that we have right now. But it's going to lead to more issues as well. So it's how the NCAA has operated for decades is they take one step forward and shoot themselves in the foot 4 times. And it's like, yeah, you keep making these adjustments, these rules that are attempting to address temporary or right now problems, but you don't have the foresight to foresee what the problems it's going to generate are. So when NIL came out, they were like, perfect, this will shut everybody up. They'll even start playing, start getting paid. And they just thought that it would be like this pay for if you're a famous player, some company wants to give you some money. And it quickly turned into schools giving players money through collectives to get them to come to the school, something it wasn't supposed to be. And that now they're trying to rectify that by making the schools pay the players directly. But that's just going to lead to another set of problems. And they aren't willing to go. They're taking a bunch of half measures. They're willing to go this far, really need to go this far, right? Because they don't want to give up everything right away. But if they just went full board and they actually let the players unionize, had a players union, had a collective bargaining agreement, started having 2-year contracts and things like that, it would alleviate a lot of these problems. Yeah, it would cost more up front, but you're going to cost yourself a lot in constantly adding these rules, and eventually it's going to get there anyways.
Well, here's something that I spoke with Tyler Siskey back with. We talked about this very same topic. He brought up the same things that you just did, and I said, well, whenever the NCAA was going to roll this out, why did they attach immediate eligibility to it? Because if you didn't have I think that's more the issue than NIL. I don't think it's a problem, but it's not really. Well, immediate eligibility attached to NIL is what, in my opinion, is causing all this drama.
Well, and here's why they did it. I can tell you exactly why. They did it because do you know how many lawsuits they would get if they tried to prevent a kid from being eligible after he transfers, and that kid comes back and says, listen, you're costing me $750,000. Now I'm going to sue the NCAA. And the NCAA, every time they go to court, they lose because they don't have a leg to stand on. Every time they get challenged, they lose. So instead of dealing with that and waiting for the lawsuits to come in, they said, well, shit, that's going to be a problem. All right, now you're immediately eligible because fuck it. We can't let you get paid, but then not let you go get more money somewhere else because of some rule we have. Like legally, they can't do that. So that's why they did it, was because it would have caused a whole nother problem. And so, but it added to the NIL problem now because players can up and leave pretty much whenever they want. I mean, they can't transfer right now. It's pretty locked down, but there's waivers, there's ways around that. But yeah, I mean, it's just how the NCAA operates. They're constantly creating more problems for themselves by trying to address problems right now. And it's just, what it is.
I don't like the immediate eligibility. I think it's ruining college football. And then what about the kids that are in the portal from the spring still?
Mm-hmm.
What
They made a bad decision.
Leonard. and also, I think it's
but the immediate eligibility thing, like that's where what I'm saying can help safeguard that. If you put in place a collective bargaining agreement, a players union, contracts. Now you've signed a 2-year contract. You can't just transfer. You can't just break that contract. It's a 2-year contract. After 2 years, if you want to leave, then you can. Or, and because I don't want to force 17, 18-year-old kids to sign a 4-year contract saying they're going to be at Ohio State, Notre Dame, Akron, whatever, for 4 years, because that's not fair either. They need the ability, if they're not getting the playing time that they want, if they're not getting the coaching and development that they want, they need the opportunity to move schools and find a better opportunity. But if you can lock them in for 2 years, that at least alleviates some of this constant need to re-recruit your own roster while you try to recruit new players out of high school, while you try to recruit new players in the transfer portal. I mean, these coaches in this personnel department is recruiting 100 kids simultaneously all the time.
Well, I think that, if you go to the contracts, I think the standard contract will be 3 years. And then if you don't do anything by the end of your junior year, okay, see you later.
Yeah, I think it depends on how it's implemented. I think if there's a players union, they'll push back on that, because I think ideally 2 years is probably the best for the players. 3 years obviously would be better for the schools because you have more control over the player at that point. However, from the school's perspective as well, once you sign a kid to a 2-year contract, you can't just cut them. You can cut them, but there's going to be penalties associated with that. So if you lock yourself into a kid for 3 years, he comes in and he's a fuck up, and not like a fuck up like getting arrested or something like that, because that'll obviously be in the contract that you can't do that or we can release you. But let's just say he's not working hard enough. He's not developing the way you thought. Well, you're locked into that kid for 3 years now, and you only have a certain number of contracts you can give out, just like the NFL. You can only have 53 men on the roster or whatever. So I think ideally, 2 years is the number, because after 2 years, if you've got a kid that's going to ever see the field at your program or not. And after 2 years as a kid, if you're ever going to be developed at that program and if that's the program you want to be at. But, I mean, from a program perspective, if I'm really good at talent evaluation and development, I would prefer a 3-year contract too. It gives me more control over the kid. But maybe you do a 2-year contract with a 3rd-year program option, where they can pick up a 3rd-year option or something. I mean, it's going to get into these NFL rookie contract type of stuff.
Third year university option to
yeah. I mean, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be shit like that.
I just don't understand the NIL was one thing. Should the kids be paid? Yes. Hell yes. I agree with that. They should be paid no matter what. They should be compensated for all the money that they bring into the university, all the buildings they build, everything that goes along, and the time and everything associated with that. They should be compensated. Now, being able to pick up your ball and go home because a coach rode your ass and is trying to make you a better man, a better person, and football is you know what this is, Carter. You had a coach at some point in time grab your face mask and chew your ass out. So you gotta take a stand at some point, because this immediate eligibility, and then you get kids that are the big old fat left tackle that went far from home. Let's say he went to Colorado State, didn't like it, hops in the portal, still sitting in the portal almost a year later and hasn't even put on pads yet and is looking to get another opportunity, and the guy hasn't worked out in 6 months. What are we doing?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, I think all that stuff's part of it. My perspective on hard coaching, at least when I was playing and being around football as much as I have, has always been, I love hard coaching. if a coach is not going to coach me hard, I don't respect it, because he doesn't actually care about my development. He doesn't care about making me a better person, a better player. And so that goes back to evaluation and identification in the recruiting process. You need to know what kind of kid you're recruiting. So if you get a Trayvon Grimes that doesn't respond well to hard coaching, and you have a wide receivers coach who's a bit of an asshole, and he makes the kid cry or something, which I'm not saying happened. I don't know that happened. I'm just saying, then he's obviously going to want to transfer home. But during the recruiting process, you should probably feel that out, right? And so, but all that stuff aside, I just think ultimately it's going to come down to the NCAA has to change how things are done. But and the other thing that's happening, I don't know if you saw this, but Alabama hired a general manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the other thing that's going to happen. These schools, that's the second one I've heard of. I forget the first one. Shoot, I don't know why I don't remember it, but there's 2 schools now that have hired general managers, or one of them hired a search firm to go find a general manager. And that's what's going to happen is all this NIL contract stuff, recruiting, all that stuff is going to be handled by a general manager, and the coach is going to be able to just focus on coaching. Now the coach will have to, it'll be like an NFL model. Like the coach is obviously still integral in the evaluation process, in deciding what prospects they want to look at, who they want to go after. But when it comes to the money part, the GM is going to handle that. And so you don't have Ryan Day, who's not allowed by NCAA rules to be talking money with these kids, having to talk money with these kids, right? And so that's where it's going.
That goes back into the immediate eligibility thing and the NIL. If the coach is trying to recruit this kid, the number one thing he's going to ask is, what am I going to get paid? Sorry, Johnny, I can't answer that. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
This is just it's just a joke. The NCAA is a joke.
I agree.
When it comes to this, and then the immediate eligibility, I don't like it, because you can't build programs. It's basically junior college football on steroids, and you're bus tossing rosters every 18 months. And especially now, I understand the portal being open at the end of the year, and I understand the portal being open whenever you have a Kalen DeBoer come in and you got, let's say, 105 guys he didn't recruit, and he's bringing some of his guys. I understand that. That makes sense. Or your position coach gets fired, i.e. Chancey Stuckey, and you've seen how that worked out for Marcus Freeman. You put the next guy behind the 8 ball again.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And, I appreciate you, Steve. I agree. It was a solid and strong standpoint by me. But just anybody listening on Twitter or watching on Twitter, go ahead and jump over to the YouTube so you can interact with us a little better. Twitter's a little tougher to follow up with comments and things like that, but jump on Twitter or jump on YouTube, watch the show, comment. We love interacting with you, love comments, but just, obviously NIL is not an imperfect solution right now, and hopefully they fix it. But jumping on, we have some big news, Duke. Pete Carroll is returning to USC. Now, not to do anything, but he's going to teach some class. That's it. I saw this and I was like, oh man, he's returning to USC. That's crazy. But now he's just going to teach a couple classes at USC. I would be really interested to know what the classes are. What is Pete Carroll teaching? How to cheat and get Reggie Bush to come to your school?
Everything that Pete Carroll did is now legal, okay?
Yeah, okay. That doesn't mean it was legal when he did it.
Hey, the rules change. The ever-changing rules of the NCAA have made Pete Carroll. It's just like a running game, like a running play. You made your offensive line right.
Yeah, except for that's all within the rules of the game.
Yeah, it's now within the rules. David Sanders got a house, a suite, and $1 million.
I understand that.
That's within the rules of the game. Everything Pete Carroll did was,
but back in 2004, it wasn't.
Yeah, but he didn't get no show cause like somebody else.
No, that's because he cooperated. He said, "Yeah, I did that shit,
and I'm leaving."
Yeah, and I'm out anyways. But no, yeah, or maybe he's going to teach a class about how 9/11 was an inside job because I know he's on that conspiracy theory as well. But but I do think it's funny. I actually like Pete Carroll. I do. As a Notre Dame fan, I hated him for the longest time because, well, he would whoop our ass. But I like Pete Carroll. He coached for my grandfather. He was a good coach for him. I've known him. I mean, I've met him a few times and known him from a distance for a long time. But I heard one story today because he's just a goofy dude. Like he's just a fun-loving, like seems to be like he's in a good mood all the time kind of guy. And I think that's why players love playing for him. But I heard Tyvis Powell talking about it, who was an Ohio State defensive back that played for him in Seattle. And he would tell stories. He's like, yeah, dude, I'm sitting in defensive meetings and Richard Sherman's on my left, Pete Carroll's on my right, and the defensive coordinator is going over the game plan for the week. And the whole time that Pete Carroll's just cracking jokes about the coaches to me, and I'm cracking up and I can't even focus on the game plan. Like, I'm like, Coach, I'm trying to lock in, but he's the head coach. I'm not going to sit there and not crack jokes with him. So overall, seems like a good guy. Other than his willingness to cheat and steal Reggie Bush from Notre Dame.
Carter, it's legal now.
I don't care. It wasn't legal then. Neither was the Bush push. He cheated on every...
That's different. Pete Carroll didn't go out there and push Reggie Bush over the goal line. It was
Nobody
Matt
pushed
Leinart.
Reggie Bush. No, Reggie Bush pushed Matt Leinart.
Or it was Matt Leinart, you know.
Yeah. No, I don't care. It's all illegal.
That's... Hey, we got the.
No, those rules change now too. You're allowed to push the quarterback now.
Exactly. The tush push.
So that's okay that they did it back then?
Have you been hanging out with Doug Archie?
No.
I'm just wondering.
No, I'm just saying. I don't give a fuck what the rules say now. The rules back then were different, and he broke them. That's all. That's it.
It's legal now.
I don't. Okay, hey, cool. So is marijuana. Are we releasing all the people in prison for marijuana?
Hey, alcohol used to be outlawed. You know.
Yeah, and guess what? If you went to jail for having booze when it was illegal, you stayed in jail even after they legalized it.
Hey, we're not here to talk about the particulars, okay? We're just stating facts. This guy's Carter takes a couple days off and he's hanging out with Doug Archie now.
All right, no days off for me, brother. But anyways, Pete Carroll, ultimate scumbag. Just kidding. He's actually a good guy. But he's teaching our nation's youth now, so that's good.
Okay. One thing before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say USC goes 7-5.
No chance.
What's up, Pete?
No chance.
Come on.
No.
You don't think so?
No, absolutely not. First of all, the dude's like 75 years old.
I don't think that matters.
I mean, it should. he struggled relating to like veterans in the NFL. You think he's going to be able to relate to an 18-year-old kid that's listening to like fucking Lil Baby or whatever? Like,
I don't know that there's still that one clip of him going out on the field, running around, throwing the ball around.
Oh, yeah, he's still a kid. Like he's a little kid at heart. Like he's young. Like that's why you don't realize this, but I think he's 2 years older than Bill Belichick. Never would have guessed.
I don't. You know, some people say he's out of touch, but is he really? I mean, he almost took Seattle to the playoffs and. They were competitive every year, and they were in it.
No, he's not. I don't think he's out of touch. I just don't think he has any desire to coach football. I don't think he has any desire to coach college football in the current landscape.
They made a lot of these rules because of him.
Yeah, I know, but do you know how much easier it was to recruit when you were the only one doing it?
I'm just saying that
now everybody's giving out millions of dollars in houses. And now he's going to go to Reggie Bush and be like, dude, I'll buy your parents a house. And he's like, yeah, so will 17 other programs. What else you got?
You don't. I think with Pete Carroll at USC, I don't like it because if Lincoln Riley scuffles a little bit, all it'll take is Lincoln Riley to either get fired or take it.
Nobody's getting older. You know, these coaches are all getting younger, man. Nobody's hiring a 75-year-old man to run your program.
It was great 20 years ago under Pete.
Yeah, 20 years ago. But anyways, another thing that I saw, Jameson Williams, the speedster, the slant guy, the deep ball guy. Well, it turns out he might be able to run a route or two. I've heard so many people talk about how this guy can't run routes. He's never going to be an elite receiver because he's not a route technician. So I just want you to watch. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I just want you to watch this route. Just absolutely filthy. Just absolutely filthy. And I tell you,
good.
If this guy learned how to not learn, he knows how to run routes. But if this guy is able to go out there and tee up defensive backs like that and just absolutely put them on skates, I promise you, the Detroit Lions might have the best receiving core in the NFL if that's the case. Between him and Amon-Ra, and you add Sam Laporta as the tight end, I mean it's going to be nasty. And I think Jameson Williams could be a top 10 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I just think that the big thing for me is everybody needs to get through camp. That's the only concerning thing.
We're almost there. Only like a week and a half left.
It's just, I see the end of the tunnel, and then the unfortunate Jagasaw injury at Notre Dame. It's just like, but I mean, that happened.
That happened early in camp. Luckily, I mean, not luckily. It sucks he's gone for the year either way, but luckily, that happened. So you still have the rest of camp to get somebody ready, which we'll talk about later because I think there's a bit of a surprise at who's going to be starting at left tackle for Notre Dame, and so we'll get into that. Some more updates, and then obviously, as the topic of the show is. We have a Deuce Knight update, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the show and let everybody know kind of what's going on with Deuce. But in other news around college football, Nebraska has a new starting quarterback. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody, but Dylan Raiola named the starting quarterback for Nebraska. Now, obviously, 5-star kid, probably the biggest recruit Nebraska's had in 20, 30 years. He's going to come in. He's going to start day one for Coach Rule, who I know Coach Rule really well. Met him when he was at Temple as an assistant and a head coach, and he's an excellent coach, all in my eyes. So I think he's going to do good things with Raiola. However, he is entering a situation that might not be ideal for a true freshman. Nebraska last year was 93rd in the nation in sacks allowed, and one of the worst passing offenses in the country. So that could be a little bit of the quarterback. It could be a little bit of the offensive line not picking up pressures, not doing their assignments. So we'll see how he looks, but this is his chance, and he better be good year one. Otherwise, I think he's going to transfer.
Val-ending quarterbacks, somebody told us about that, and now that we mentioned that, we're probably going to get hate mail in our Twitter DMs.
Whatever.
Well, Jeff Sims, I believe, started at Nebraska last year, and I think that
Is that Chris Sims' son?
No. I think it was Jeff Sims. He was one of the deep cut Chris Drew quarterbacks.
Oh, of course he was.
So with that being said, Jeff Sims was an absolute turnover machine. I think he got benched by the end of the year, maybe. But I didn't, after Nebraska lost to Colorado, I was kind of like out on Nebraska. I'm like, it's Matt Rule's first year. It's not going to go well.
Yeah, it's going to be a 3-year turnaround at least. I think this year, hopefully they'll be improved. I think starting a true freshman quarterback, they're not going to be as improved as Matt would have liked. But
I think Raiola's head and shoulders above Jeff Sims last.
Oh no, I don't disagree with that. I just, as a true freshman, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to have bad games that are going to, cost the program wins. He does have a nice little 4-game stretch in the beginning. Week 2, he's got Colorado, so that's a big one for him. Hopefully we'll either show both programs if they're for real or if they're frauds. I think if Nebraska beats Colorado I think Nebraska has to beat Colorado because I think Colorado is absolutely a fraudulent program. So,
well, we're about to see, the thing I like about the college football season is that we'll get a portion of, the story told up front this year in the beginning of the year. We're going to find out how good Clemson is. We're going to find out how good Notre Dame is. We're going to find out Colorado, Nebraska. That game, Colorado beat them last year because
Texas, Michigan as well.
Texas, Michigan. So we're going to find out about a lot of these programs early. Yeah. So it's just, a couple weeks away. Just hang tight, and then we'll see how right we were when it comes to the offseason.
Yeah, I think Nebraska is going to be improved this year. I think the offense will be improved. I think Raiola should be serviceable. Again, true freshman, he's going to make mistakes, but I think he's going to put enough on tape that you're like, okay, I see what everybody saw in this kid. If he can get developed and if they can put pieces around him, Nebraska could be, a program of consequence in the Big Ten in 2 years.
Yes, I agree to that. It's just that Matt Rule's got to build it in get the train out of the station and just, get the momentum rolling, because the big thing with Nebraska is, I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's not a lot there. It's just it's a bigger Iowa. So but back in the 90s when Nebraska had major success, you know what they did? They had a bunch of dudes from California. So they got a bunch of dudes from the West Coast. So Matt Rule probably follow that same trend. And, he's a good recruiter, good developer. So I think, like the great Steve Adazio says, just guys being dudes.
Just guys being dudes. Additionally, some news came out. This dropped on Buckeye Scoop. Again, it's from Buckeye Scoop. So Buckeye Scoop's been right about a lot of things. They haven't been right about some things, and there's some things that they've said that haven't come to fruition yet. So take it for what it's worth. However, it seems like from people I've talked to as well that the NCAA confirmed that the Glizzy Guzzler himself in Michigan hacked Ohio State's practice film footage and attempted to hack several other programs to steal their practice footage ahead of the 2021 football games. At least 2021, maybe 2022 too, but I know 2021 for sure. They hacked Ohio State and were able to obtain video files of practice footage leading up to that game in Ann Arbor. No, in Columbus in 2021. Sorry. So, I mean, if that's true and that actually is confirmed by the NCAA, that's just another piece of the puzzle, man. I mean, the more that comes out about this, I mean, if that doesn't scream lack of institutional control and severe penalties, I don't know what does.
Well, I don't get, if you are the cheeseburger thief himself with a glass of milk, if you are going to attack coaching with enthusiasm unknown to man, why are you committing cyber crimes across state lines? Why are you hacking? Why are you stealing signs? Why are you sending your creepy intern to Central Michigan? Why are you sending him to Western Michigan? Why are you doing any of this? And also, I think that if Ryan Day and the fellas down there knew they were stealing the signs and didn't say anything, and you lost, I think it's, unfair to Ryan if they got cheated in that game, and it's unfair to every other coach in the Big Ten if they got cheated. And the biggest thing is the NCAA needs to roll this out and give the punishment, because it just seems like every day there's a new report and it's not that bad and it's this, it's that. Like, just call me when you give out the damn punishment at this point.
Right. I'm sick of the reports, right? I'm sick of the reports of all this shit that they did.
It's like, well, why wouldn't you just release it in one big damn report? I just can't. don't get it. And I get it. Michigan is leaking the stuff because the NCAA is not going to, they're going to keep it airtight.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know why I know why it's taking this long. The NCAA notoriously takes forever on investigations, so I understand that. That's why I've said all along, you're not going to get any kind of resolution or any kind of punishment handed down before this season. The earliest you'll see it is like January, February next year, and that's just the facts. I mean, that you're not going to see anything before then. But I think the more that comes out about it, the more there's going to be public pressure put on the NCAA to actually hand out a punishment. And so I don't know why Michigan is leaking this stuff themselves if they are, because all you're doing is giving more ammo to the public to pressure the NCAA to be like, dude, you can't just slap them on the wrist for this. Like everything they've done. Now you're talking about if they were hacking into secure servers and things like that, those are actual crimes. It's not just sending a guy to watch a football game anymore, right? Like if they hacked into Ohio State's servers to obtain proprietary film footage that was hosted on a server owned by the university, owned by the athletic department, now you're talking about stealing stuff that is, I mean, that's actionable. You're not allowed to do that. And so, and that's why I don't know, like, that's why I don't 100% buy it, because you're talking about committing actual crimes. And I think if there were actual crimes committed, I think there would be a far broader investigation being done, including law enforcement, things like that. Although I guess if you hack the Ohio State football team server, like, who really cares? You didn't steal money or anything. So who gives a fuck?
Well,
But
let's think of it this way. Nobody's seen or heard from Matt Weiss since last January. That guy is underground and his computer got taken. They allegedly found the gambling cookies and found the practice.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If the gambling stuff comes out, now you're in a whole, and now you're in a whole different ballgame, because you're dealing with freaking casinos, which are basically mobs, like mafia.
So we'll see when everything comes out. Yeah. It's just that, it's a big wait and see.
My question is, the NCAA confirms that Michigan hacked into Ohio State's server and stole this footage and attempted to hack into several other teams. Motherfucker, why was Ohio State the only one they were able to hack into? Like, whose password was that weak? Like, who has this? Like, what did they just get? Some like freshman that they recruited that was like, that guy's a fucking idiot. His password has to be 1 2 3 4 or something like that. Like, how did they get in? And why was it only able to be done at Ohio State? And they attempted other universities and couldn't get in, I guess. Like, it's just, it's wild.
It's a wild segment. And
I agree, Weston. There's got to be connections between Weiss and all of this stuff.
That's how they found it, was because he had some no-no pictures that put you on the no-no list, and the FBI found that stuff on his computer. Yeah. And then I think as soon as they started uncovering stuff, I do know Stallions stole some hard drives allegedly, or I don't know.
The hard drives were removed. We don't know if it was Stallions or how it happened, but I think it was 7 hard drives were removed from university computers, which is a whole different conversation about how that happens.
That's a felony, I think, too, because you're stealing state property.
If they were stolen, yes. If the Michigan IT department came in and took the hard drives and destroyed them or something, then it's not a crime by anybody except maybe Michigan for destroying evidence, but it's not evidence of an actual crime. It's an evidence of an NCAA violation, which there's no teeth to that. So I don't know. It's a whole. It goes so deep and so wide that there's just no way that it can't be tied back to, at minimum, Jim Harbaugh did not have institutional control over his employees, because there was the Weiss, obviously, Stallions, the linebacker coach that was fired, which Weston agreed. I agree. Yeah, he could have been just the fall guy. But there was employees that have been fired, employees that have been left, all these different things. And even if Jim Harbaugh wasn't directing the operation, wasn't aware of the full scope of what was being done. It doesn't matter. This is such a breach of everything, every rule, that it's got to be. I mean, lack of institutional control was put in place because of this. This is why that is a rule. Like, you can't just claim ignorance. Like, ignorance of the law is not a defense in the court of law. Well, ignorance of the rules or ignorance of somebody doing something in your program is no longer a defense against the NCAA. I agree. That is odd, G. Absolutely.
But yes, enough with those guys.
Anyways, it's all fun, and we'll see. The punishment or lack thereof will be handed down eventually, and then hopefully we can put all this to rest. Everybody that was involved in any fashion will have their punishment handed down if there is one, and then we can move on, and everybody will know that Michigan won the national championship. Michigan went 15-0. Michigan beat Ohio State 3 times in a row. Everybody already knows that. But outside of that, jump into some Notre Dame talk and continue kind of our state of the program, breaking down opponents for Notre Dame. This will probably be the last one we do for right now. We'll continue to break down opponents on a week-by-week basis as we preview games and things like that. But starting next week, we'll be jumping more into game week mode, so it'll be a little different. But I want to take a look at the last game on the schedule, the Trojans of Southern California, the USC Trojans, and just take a look and break down kind of their roster and how that game looks as of now. Obviously, there's 3 months of college football to be played before we get there. But as I always do, I look at returning production first just to give me a baseline, right? And so USC ranked 99th in the country in returning production at only 50%. Majority of that is on the defensive side of the ball. They lost a lot of production on the offensive side. Obviously, key departures, you can't not mention him. Caleb Williams obviously went number 1 overall in the draft. That's a major departure from your program. Now, they did name Miller Moss the starting quarterback yesterday or last week or whenever it was, which I didn't even know there was a quarterback competition going on. But I guess you have to name somebody. I don't think that was ever like a thing until recently. Like, if there wasn't a known quarterback competition, everybody just assumed this guy was starting, and then week 1 he ran out there, and you're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But everybody has to name the starter nowadays. So Miller Moss will be your starting quarterback. They also lost Marshawn Lloyd, the running back. And then their top 2 pass catchers, Taj Washington and Brandon Rice. All 4 of those guys went to the NFL, were drafted. So those are huge losses on the offensive side of the ball. They lost some pieces on defense as well. But majority of their defense is intact, which isn't saying much because it was one of the worst defenses in college football last year. So lost a lot on offense. They obviously brought in some good pieces in the recruiting. Not a whole lot of offensive production brought in the transfer portal. I think they got a running back out of Memphis or something like that. I forget where. But they brought in a transfer running back and to kind of help that. And they have some young guys at running back. Their key additions in the offseason, the number 1 and the most important and the only one that I really care about is their defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn from UCLA. Obviously, they fired Alex Grinch kind of mid-season last year, and their defense was a shit show, and it has been a shit show ever since Lincoln Riley got there. But they bring in D'Anton Lynn, who was Chip Kelly's defensive coordinator last year at UCLA. UCLA's defense was decent. I'm of the mindset that they continue to go through defensive coordinators like candy. So I don't care. They could bring in Brent Venables. They could bring in what was Frank Beamer's guy in Virginia Tech? Damn it, why can't I think of his name?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
It was the original. Like, you see, they show him so much. You got to drink every time they show him on the screen, and then that became Venables. I forget his name right now. Damn, that's gonna fuck me up. But until you show it to me on the field, I don't believe in USC's defense or Lincoln Riley's capability of putting together a defensive staff that's capable of putting a product that even resembled somebody playing defense on the field. Now, they did bring in some decently big time transfers on the defense. They brought in Kamari Ramsey, the safety who was at UCLA, Greedy Vance, who's a really good corner from Florida State, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, who's a linebacker from Oregon State, and then Nate Clifton, who is defensive tackle from Vandy. Bud Foster, thank you, G. I knew somebody would get me. Bud Foster, man. Yeah, they could have Bud Foster coaching the defense or anybody, and I don't think they'd be good. But they did bring in a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball to try to improve that defense. Obviously, new defensive coordinator, will see what that does. So after looking at the program, right, the returning production, kind of what they added and what they lost, I always look at, okay, how does it match up with Notre Dame? And to be quite honest with you, matches up really well for Notre Dame. I mean, really well. Their strengths on offense are their skill players, which is going to be wide receivers, running backs. Luckily for Notre Dame, that's kind of Notre Dame's strength on defense is the secondary. Their D line is going to be really good. Linebackers are solid, but their secondary is elite, one of the best secondaries in the country. So I think that matches up really well. USC's offense versus Notre Dame's defense, I think Notre Dame matches up really well. Notre Dame's offense, I don't want to continue beating a dead horse. We know what the issues are there. Unproven talent at wide receiver, uncertainty at offensive line. Those are the two issues. A little bit of unproven talent at running back, but they have such a committee of running backs. They'll be able to run the football. And then Riley Leonard's health. So looking at Notre Dame's offense versus USC's defense, and I just mentioned, I don't think USC's defense is going to be good, or at least until they show me they're good, I'll never believe they are. So I think that's another good matchup for Notre Dame. So really looking at it, I don't have any big concerns going into that game. Really, the only concerns I have is that it's the last game of the season, and how healthy is Notre Dame going to be at that point in the year? Right. So it's a rivalry game, last game of the season. Are they healthy enough? Because I think if you get into a situation where they have some injuries on the offensive line, or Riley Leonard's banged up or something like that, because their depth on defense is really elite. So I don't think the injuries on defense, I mean, you lose somebody like Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, it's going to be impactful. But they have a lot of depth at those positions. Where they don't have a lot of depth is offensive line, an unproven quarterback room behind Riley Leonard. And they have depth at receiver, but it's mediocre depth. I mean, I don't think there's any elite receivers on that squad. So I don't see a huge issue. If they come into the game healthy, I think Notre Dame has a really good shot to win this one. And so my prediction for that game, assuming that they come in healthy enough, is Notre Dame 42, USC 17.
The only thing when it comes to these rivalry games that I will throw out there, you can throw the personnel aside, you can throw the records out. So the big issue I have is that Notre Dame going on the road last game of the year. So going on the road last game of the year, especially West Coast team, if Lincoln Riley's down on his luck and he's coaching for the skin of his teeth before they just hand it over to Pete Carroll, I think it could be an issue.
I agree. I understand that. Throw the records out, everything like that. Unfortunately, I mean, good news for Notre Dame is that Lincoln Riley has not been very successful in this rivalry yet. Obviously, he's only been there, 5 years or something, 3 years? No, I think it's 5. Anyways, he hasn't been very successful. Notre Dame's kind of had his number. They've been able to slow down his prolific offenses. And again, USC's defenses have been terrible. And I agree. Weston, Joe Alt is a massive loss for Notre Dame. Absolutely agree. We'll touch on that up more in a second because left tackle is one of the big question marks for Notre Dame this season. And Joe Alt absolutely made Sam Hartman a much better quarterback by protecting as well as he did. But yeah, so I mean, that's just my thoughts on USC. I think ultimately USC is going to be a middle of the road Big Ten team this year. I don't think they have a lot that impresses me. They have some good skill players. I don't want to, undercut them too much, but it's going to come down to their defense. The Big Ten is a much more defensive conference than the Pac-12 was. So you're not going to be able to win 9-10 games based off offense alone. And if your defense can't stop an offense and your offense can't run up and down the field because every other team plays defense, it could be a long year for Lincoln.
Yeah. So, it's going to be one of those wait and see games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, by the time it gets here, we'll have a much clearer picture on who everybody is. I think Notre Dame will be in a position to be fighting for a playoff spot. So I think that is going to be extra motivation on top of the rivalry, on top of everything else that goes into it. But getting into some updates from fall camp for Notre Dame, for the Domers out there, some really cool, updates. I read some articles and also talked to a couple people I know in South Bend and got their feeling from some of the open practices that they were able to attend. And I think a bit of a surprise going back to losing Joe Alt, obviously, to the NFL draft in top 5 pick. It's a massive loss. It's really hard to replace somebody of that caliber in general. And then on top of that, the sophomore that was the de facto starter that everybody thought was going to be the guy that stepped into that role, Charles Jagisa, tears his pec in the first week of fall camp, and he's out for the year. And so then kind of question mark at left tackle, right? Didn't know exactly who was going to step in. A lot of the noise early on was that the graduate student, Tosh Baker, who had some experience, was going to be the guy to kind of take the reins and was given the first crack at it. However, the last week or two, it looks like Notre Dame is going to be trotting out a freshman tackle in Anthony Knapp. He's been taking all the reps with the ones for the past at least week, and it looks like they're going to start a true freshman tackle. On top of that, it looks like that Sam Pendleton, who is a sophomore, is going to be starting at the left guard position. So a lot of inexperience on that left side of the line, which could be problematic for a quarterback that he's mobile. He's really good at moving and getting out of pressure, but he does have a bit of a history with injuries. So that's a huge concern. But that did come out this week that in all intensive purposes, Anthony Knapp is going to be the starter at left tackle, possibly week 1 against Texas A&M. I did hear that the coaches are having discussions about the value of somebody older with more experience like Tosh Baker starting week 1 in A&M at Kyle Field just because of the environment and the situation. However, if Anthony Knapp is head and shoulders better than him, I don't think you can take the risk of starting somebody that's not as good just because they have more experience. So I do believe Knapp will be the guy that trots out there with the first team offense, the first series of the game in A&M.
Well, that's the chicken or the egg argument. Do you start the guy with more career starts, or do you start the guy that's better?
Well, my perspective has always been you start the guy that's better. Because as coaches, as people in charge of that, your job is to prepare them for the environment they're going to be in. Your job is to prepare them for the game. So if they have a better skill set, if they're better at the position, you should be able to get them prepared for what they're going to be walking into as much as you can. Obviously, you can't emulate 110,000 crazy Texas A&M fans at practice. However, if he's actually ready to start as a freshman, you should be able to prepare him for what he's walking into so that he doesn't go in with his deer in the headlights like, oh my God, what is this? And at least that's my experience with kids and with what I think. However, if you start doing game week practices and you're pumping up the volume and he starts making mistakes in practice and you feel like the more experienced guy won't make those mistakes, and having a little bit less of a skill set, but not making massive mistakes on assignments and things like that is a better opportunity for you to win the game, then I guess you start the more experienced guy.
Yeah. I think we're going to see both of them in the game, to be honest. I think we'll see both guys, to be honest. That's just me.
I think so. I think you see both for sure if Tosh Baker starts.
Yes. I'll agree to that.
I think you maybe see both if Anthony Knapp goes out and struggles. If he struggles, misses an assignment, it looks like he's just totally overwhelmed, then I think they'll swap him out and see how it goes. But I think if Tosh Baker starts, you'll probably see both no matter what, because I think even if Tosh Baker goes out and is serviceable, if there's a little too much pressure or they're not getting a push on the offensive line on run plays, the line coach, the offensive coordinator, everybody's going to be like, dude, I think Knapp could get this done. Let's put him in and see how it goes, if the offense isn't moving the ball right away. So I think there's a good chance you see both. I think it's a much better chance if Baker's the starter.
Yeah, I just, this is something that we've talked about. I tried to tell another person this. I said, what were one of the big three the key factors coming into the season? I said, Riley Leonard's health, lack of offensive line depth, and lack of skill position players. You can say we're haters. Some people don't like the truth. And in the last topic of the topic du jour of what we got going on today is a fact. So
yep. We'll jump into that in a second. Might go a little over an hour today. I'm going to try to wrap it up, but just the main takeaways from camp. Breeze through it. Pretty much what we already said. The offense is not where it needs to be, and it likely won't be the few weeks early in the season, which I think was kind of expected. New offensive coordinator, new quarterback, young offensive line that hasn't had a chance to really gel and get it together. So the coaches have kind of already talked about this. Denbrock was talking about how when Jaden Daniels transferred, they had a game early in the season where they only threw for like 84 yards. And he's like, sometimes it takes a minute for everything to click. And so he's already prepping you for like, hey, if the offense doesn't look up to par right away, it's okay. It's coming, which is fine as long as you get through week one with a win, because then you have time to build it up. But week one, you got A&M. Obviously, the O-line issues we just talked about, they're potentially going to be starting a freshman, a sophomore, and 3 juniors at the offensive line who have a combined 6 starts. So 5 guys they combine for 6 starts. Riley Leonard still learning the system and trying to develop chemistry with those skilled players. The other thing that came out, which is not shocking to anybody, but the defense looks as expected. The only thing unexpected is how ready the guys are that are younger and behind the starters. So the depth on this defense is incredible. You're talking about the corner room was going to be a little light, they thought. True freshmen, sophomores have come in and really taken command of the defense and have filled those cornerback 4 and 5 spots, as well as the safety position. You have Adon Schuler, who's a safety, was expected to be the backup safety behind Rod Hurd, who is a transfer from Northwestern. It looks like Schuler, the sophomore, is going to be starting, and Rod Hurd will be playing. He'll still play a bunch, but it looks like some of these younger guys are really coming into their own on the defensive side of the ball. So it should be a top 5 defense, maybe even top 2 defense in the nation.
Right, I agree with you on that. I think Notre Dame is poised to have a really good year on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep. And then jumping into the topic that most people, are here for and kind of what's been going on. As the headline reads, Deuce Knight is going to Auburn. So he is locked in a visit. He's going to go to Auburn. Again, this isn't his first visit. This will be his 3rd or 4th visit. Second visit that I believe his parents will be accompanying him on. And he's going down there for the home opener against Alabama State or something like that on August 31st. This is why that's bad news for Notre Dame. First of all, it's bad news he's going. It's even worse news that he's going week 1, because he's going to be on Auburn's campus focused on the visit. And I mean, he's not going to completely ignore the Texas A&M game, but he's not going to be as locked in. He's not going to be watching it as intently as he would have been had he not been on this visit. And so in all likelihood, from everybody I've heard from, everybody believes this at this point, is that Deuce Knight will flip to Auburn shortly after the visit. So he's going on Saturday for the game. I don't think he'll flip Sunday, but I think early the following week he could flip. And I think that's going to be kind of how it plays out from here. I think Notre Dame really needed to try to get him either to come to the A&M game or get him on campus right before or something to try to keep their name in the conversation. But I have been on the side of it's okay. Let's wait this out. Let's wait and see. But this visit is I think the final nail in the coffin.
Well, when it comes to this, I'm not tooting the own horn on this, but we've been ahead of this. We were on this in June? The beginning of June is when we first reported this. Yeah. The Notre Dame fans can say he's not decommitted yet. It's just a matter of time before this happens. Mm-hmm. I've tried to tell people this. Hopefully we have the smart Notre Dame fans listening today that you can go back and watch. I believe it was June 6th. Go back and watch that show. We may not have gotten the school right. And Carter didn't believe me. He was with everybody else at that point and says, "Man, I don't know. Do you want to report this?" And we even sat on it a week.
Yeah, we did.
Before we reported it. Mm-hmm. And you could sit there and say all you want and say NIL this, NIL that, but try to get from Mississippi to South Bend opposed to getting to Auburn.
Yeah.
Just check it out.
I mean, and I think the location has something to do with it. I think ultimately what it comes down to is the reputation of playing SEC football and their capability of putting big time players into the league at every position, but specifically quarterback as well. On top of that, I think, and what's interesting, and what I think is a real problem for Notre Dame and something they need to look at as a coaching staff and as a program is Auburn didn't recruit Deuce very heavily until a couple months ago. Like when we started reporting that he might decommit, Auburn wasn't even that heavy on him. He's their third choice at quarterback in this class. So they lost out on their top two choices and then started recruiting him. And he was already committed to Notre Dame.
And, they came in late. And, mm-hmm. That's kind of how it is. Yep. The SEC and recruiting. They'll either have their quarterback up front, mm-hmm. First couple weeks of it, or they slow play it and then it's a signing day issue.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a bad look for Notre Dame, and it's kind of becoming
the norm,
a bit of a trend where they get these kids that commit early and then they can't keep them. And they end up flipping to these SEC schools or whoever it is, or Michigan in the case of Ivan Taylor. And it looks bad because Freeman's the best recruiter Notre Dame's ever had, is what I'm told. And I don't disagree. I think Brian Kelly struggled with this as well. I mean, not so much because the NIL wasn't as big of a thing back then. And obviously Charlie Weiss and, Tyrone Willingham, some of the other guys struggled to put together big classes, but Charlie Weiss had a couple top 5 classes. But Marcus Freeman is by all reports, by inside Notre Dame, the beat and everything like that, but also nationally, he's very well respected as one of the best recruiters in the nation. And I'm told that money's no issue, that Notre Dame has all this money for their NIL deals and everything like that. And it's like, either you're having a problem identifying the guys that you need to identify that are going to come to Notre Dame, or you're having a problem closing them because you're not as good at recruiting as you think you are, or you actually don't have the money that you think you do to offer these guys. Now, I don't think money plays a role in this one at all. Everything I've read, everything I've been told is that Auburn offered Deuce the same NIL package that they offered the kid that they lost to Texas, because he was going to flip from Texas to Auburn. Texas matched the offer and he went to Texas. Or, I mean, he hasn't signed yet, so who knows. But they offered him that same one. And I was told Notre Dame matched it and that it's not a money thing. And so if it's not a money thing, then it's a recruiting thing. and you aren't developing the relationships you think you are with these kids, you aren't identifying kids who will actually commit and go to your program, it's becoming a major issue, because not only are you missing out on high level athletes and prospects that could change your program, but you're wasting a ton of time and resources recruiting these kids, and you're missing out on other kids that you could have gotten. So now when they lose Deuce Knight, hopefully it's sooner rather than later. First of all, because if this is a signing day flip, you're screwed. There's no you can't go get a 3-star quarterback that might be okay. They're already signed their letter. They're done. But I looked at who they're looking at to replace Deuce Knight if he were to flip, and it's a 3-star that's committed to Washington and another 3-star that's committed to like Hawaii or something like that. And it's like, man, there were so many better options out there if you didn't waste all this time with Deuce Knight, if you had known early on that you weren't going to get him. But it is what it is. You just can't keep wasting resources on kids that aren't going to commit to your program.
Well, it's you want to come down to it. You recruit the kid for 18 months to 2 years, and you're going to lose this kid, and then whenever you lose the kid, it's a crushing blow, because you went from the first recruiting class until you're what, 10, 11?
I think they're
Maybe
12 right now.
10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. And
and that's with Deuce Knight as a commit, by the way.
And yeah, it's
so if they don't replace Deuce Knight with anything of consequence, you're looking at landing outside the top 15.
Yeah, and it's just that's where it's at. And you can talk about other programs that have lost big name kids, but they have log jams like the Ohio State quarterback room. There's log jam there.
When you look at programs that are losing out on big recruits, I'd have to go back and I'd have to study other programs closer, because I obviously pay the most attention to Notre Dame and Ohio State and some of these Midwest programs. But most of the time when programs like Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, most of the time when those programs lose recruits, it's a recruiting battle that they didn't commit to that school. It's not they've been committed to you for 10 months and then they flip. Most of the time. Now, people flip all the time. I understand that. But most of those programs, once they get the commitment, they hold on to it. Very rarely do you see them continuing to lose big-time prospects that are flipping to other schools late in the cycle.
Yeah, and I think for the 2025 cycle, we're getting down to, the fourth quarter started on the 2025 cycle, in my opinion. You got the 12, 13 weeks of the season, and you got to push. And I just don't think that going into it, you're going to have, if you lose this kid, it's going to be a blow. And
yeah, I agree. But it is what it is. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it other than get better at recruiting for the next cycle. Like if Deuce Knight's flipping, he's a lost cause. You aren't getting him back. Now, maybe he goes down to Auburn for a year, realizes he hates it, and enters the transfer portal and comes to Notre Dame, which is something I've talked about previously.
That's how they got Julian saying. That's how
these kids are not locked into this program. So just because you lose them now doesn't mean he won't come back later. Hugh Freeze could get fired or leave next year, and then all these people are in the portal. And Deuce Knight's like, damn, I really like Notre Dame. Maybe I should go check that out.
The Noah Ruggles kid, he committed early, and so I think having a gap there in between, maybe if you don't get a quarterback this cycle, it's not that big of a deal, because you got CJ Carr coming in, and you got the Ruggles kid coming in after him.
Grubbs, right?
Or Grubbs, sorry. It's just, sometimes maybe two things can be true. Maybe Auburn gets their guy and Notre Dame gets their guy. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. And you're gonna have guys in the portal too.
Yeah. And no, I'm not saying this is a death blow or anything. It's just concerning from high school recruiting perspective. It's not going to be a death blow to the program. You can absolutely overcome it. You can absolutely replace Deuce Knight with players that have skill set that's maybe similar, either however you do it. But the lifeblood of college football is still high school recruiting. Now you can do that, and you can complement that with the transfer portal and things like that. But you need to be able to land some of these big time kids out of high school. Otherwise, you're never going to turn the program into what I think Marcus Freeman wants the program to be, which is they want to be mentioned in the same vein as Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. And right now they're not. And that's they shouldn't be. There's only 3 programs in the country that should be, and I just named them. But if you want to get into that echelon, you're not going to do that just in the transfer portal.
Right. It just takes, building long-term success and things of that consequence and making the playoff. Yeah. It's just, you gotta do something in the playoff. You got to make the playoff. You got Texas A&M. The whole college football world is watching this game, and this is no bigger opportunity for Marcus Freeman, and it's a boom or a bust. If you go out there, you lay an egg, it's not going to be perceived well. So,
I think final thoughts on this, and then we get out of here. I know we're going a little late tonight, but really there's 3 things you need to do to change the narrative and to change the narrative in recruiting. And that is, number 1, beat Texas A&M week 1. Go into an SEC school, beat them. Boom. That's checks off a box. Make the college football playoff and actually make some noise. You're going to have to play that first round. You're not getting a bye. So win that first round game for sure. Hopefully win a second round game. But even if you don't win that first round game, that gets the monkey off your back of, they can make the playoffs, but they get blown out every time. And then put kids in the league offensively. Because they put defensive players in the league all the time. They put O-linemen in the league all the time. But put a wide receiver in the league. Put a quarterback in the league. Let Riley Leonard come out and have a year and go be a late first, early second round pick. Now you can start selling these kids on something other than, dude, we got Mike Denbrock. He's going to change everything. Watch. Now we can be like, dude, you could come in and do what Riley Leonard did. Play in our system for 3 years instead of his 1, and you might be a top 10 pick instead of a late first, early second pick. And you can start selling these things to these kids. But those are the 3 things you have to do this year. You have to beat A&M week 1 to get an SEC win. You have to make the college football playoff, and you have to win a game. And then obviously put kids in the league. And so Riley Leonard, that's your best bet right now. Get him to be an NFL level quarterback that he gets drafted. And I don't want him drafted in the 6th round. I need day 1 or day 2.
Right. And are those your final thoughts, Carter?
Yeah, that's all I got on that. It's I know we went long. We had a lot, like I said at the beginning, we got a lot to cover today. It's a big show, last show before week 0. So get your college football in this weekend, and we'll be back on Monday with some exciting announcements, some new things that we're gonna do, kind of the rebrand and things like that. Hopefully, it'll be done by Monday, and we can jump into game week, baby.
Right on. And my final thoughts are: go out there and take care of business against Texas A&M, and college football is back. Saturday, Florida State, Georgia Tech. I will be watching, and it is it is a process. And for everybody out there watching, please hit the like and subscribe button. And we're also on Spotify as well. If you don't want to see us, or if that's a better listening platform, like and subscribe. Spotify, we're on there. Podbean, Apple Music. So we're on various platforms. Check us out on Instagram and Twitter as well. And if you could be a friend and tell a friend and share the show with your group chat or somebody of that sort, that'd be great. Absolutely. To help us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Share it around. And anybody who's going to be in South Bend, September 28th, we will be there for the Louisville game. Hopefully going to do a live show from South Bend the day of the game, probably around noon or something like that, before it's a 3:30 kick. So yeah, come out and see us, man. We'll be hanging out. We'll be watching the game. chilling. And then on top of that, just be ready. This season is going to go quick. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a blast. We're going to blow this thing up. We're going to do a lot of really fun things. Obviously talked about the Twitter spaces on Saturdays after the game, our normal live shows breaking down the games and then previewing the games. I believe we'll be able to get we won't be able to show it because of copyright stuff, but we'll be able to get the all 22 film for the game. So that way we can kind of watch it from, because I don't know if you can find a platform that maybe has all 22 film that you can watch and have somebody break it down for you. If you just watch the TV copy, you don't really see what's going on. So we're going to watch the all 22 film and break down kind of what's going on in the game. And then on top of that, I think, just be excited, man. It's going to be a fun year.
All right. With that being said, everybody have a good night, and we will see you back Monday.